Right. That's a picture of me. I do not have a camera, so yeah, this is just me at KH6LC over on the Big Island of Hawaii, working a lot of DX. And how, do you see a radio up there right now?
Yep.
Okay, it looks like we're working then. Notice what frequency it's on, right? I guess maybe you don't see that's on the K6BJ repeater.
I see it.
Okay, good. So right now that's live. So if anybody wants to identify or whatever, you will probably hear it over my local mic. But I'm remoting into N6IJ right now, which is over in Marina. And at that station, we have an Elecraft K3S. Then also we have the CAT 500 tuner and the KPA 500 amplifier, which works very well. And I have multiple antennas hooked up to it. And I have a delta loop, which covers 10 through 80 meters, and a off-center fed dipole up at 70 feet, which covers 160 through 6 meters. And on 2 meters, I have a 3-element Yagi, which is tilted at 45 degrees for horizontal and vertical polarization. So it works out pretty good. Anywho, RemoteHams.com, Brandon and I got going in this back in about 2005. And this is a time where I'd gone on a cruise down to Mexico and brought my FT857 out there and having a lot of fun working DX up on the ship using a mag mount, which is one of those big 10-inch mag mounts that you put for an HF antenna. And I was using that on the deck because it was all steel. It was a great ground plane. So I'm working away on DX for several days, and well, eventually people are looking at video and said this doesn't look right. And long story short, on my anniversary night, we couldn't get into our cabin, and we'd been locked out, and they let security let us in, and then had all kinds of questions asked me about my radio, my antenna, and my homemade battery pack, which is in a Playmate cooler, which wasn't very professional. So needless to say, it kind of looked like a bomb. So we went through a lot of crap. It was on our anniversary. My wife was pissed off at me for bringing the fricking radio and this and that. And enough said. So I said to myself, well, you know what? I'm not going to bring the radio on the ship anymore. And I think I'm going to come up with another solution. So I decided I'm going to do it remote. Now, back in the 80s, I'd done remote already because I moved into a nice little spread up in the Aptos Hills just above Becky and Dave outside the Nissan National Forest. And you know, it's a good location. I set my antenna and all that, but guess what? I interfered with my landlady and the other tenants. So, you know, interfering on the TV, interfering on the stereo, even interfering on the toaster. So it wasn't very fun. The landlady said, hey, this has got to stop. I go, shit. You know, I really love it up here. It's up in the hills, great location. And I still wanted to operate, so I had friends. So I decided to take my radio down to my mom's QTH in Aptos. I said, I'm just going to set up a 2-meter VHF link and run an external antenna and use my receiver up at my QTH to receive it. So that way I have dual diversity. So that's pretty good. So I did that. That worked out great. And it just kind of expanded from there. Like I said, once after I got off the ship, did all that sort of stuff, I was doing the remote thing and I was really getting into it. And I got to a point where I said, you know what? I can't figure this stuff out. This is just getting way too complicated for what I wanted to do. Here comes Brandon. Well, I call him Brandini. Brandini makes things happen. He's just like a freaking magician. He's fantastic, great guy, love him to death. So we got together and basically started up RemoteHams. And the whole precept behind that was, you know, hey, you're on vacation, you don't need to take your radio with you. You can do it remotely, and you don't have to get in problems with the feds or the FAA or any other entities that might not like your radio. So between that and also being in a place where you can't transmit, you have too much TVI, Or like we talked about earlier, you're in a CCNR situation. You're in an apartment. You can't put up an antenna. You're just kind of screwed. You can listen. Nowadays, you can use FT8, which is great. You can use low power and FT8 and communicate all around the world with a very little antenna. But when it comes to single sideband, no soap. The other problem is that you might have a high noise level. You know, your noise level might be Nest 9 or higher, and you can't hear anybody. So it kind of defeats the purpose. And that when it comes in down to the SDR radios, which Craig mentioned, and remote hams, it's all radio. Okay, remote hams has several radios out there, close to 300 at any time, and there are a lot of SDR receivers out there. Nice thing about the SDR receivers is they can allow many users, and some of them are in a great location like Half Moon Bay. You'll hear a lot of remote. You'll hear a lot of guys that are running a net, especially like on 75 meters, and they might have a high noise environment or whatever, and they use an SDR receiver, generally like Half Moon Bay or Utah, as a backup. They might not hear everybody, but the receiver does. So they hear him, he's running enough power, so everybody hears him, but he might not hear everybody else. So that's where an SDR receiver comes in. A lot of people do use it that way. However, if you're limited, like most of us are, and you need to transmit also, then you can. That's the nice thing about remote hams is you can receive, transmit. You can tune it just like you would tune any other radio. You have several types of buttons. If you look up here on the screen, you have different modes. You can go ALC or power for your meter, for example. You have multiple filters. You have a lot of different options. And on this radio right now, I'm in the test mode, which is, I call it the intercom mode, which means that nothing goes out on the air. So, for example, Brandon, KG6YPI, is logged in here right now. And I can just go, hello, Brandon, how goes it?
I'm hearing you fine on the remote and
Okay, very good. All right, thanks. So we're in the test mode right now. If I were to take it out of the test mode, like this, we'd be transmitting the K6BJ. So there are a lot of options with the remotes, and we have, of course, many people that are using them. This is the client. We use a client-server relationship. So basically, if you want to host your radio, you run a server, which you can download easily on RemoteHams.com, which I can show you up right over here. This is, by the way, a very interesting radio. We'll get into this later. But you go to RemoteHams.com and kind of gives you instructions on what to do. And you download the software. Use your call sign. Repeat, use your call sign as your username. They'll make it a lot easier to get approved on other people's radios because they don't want to hear Joe Monkey on their radio, for example. They want to see somebody with a call sign. They want to approve it. And we can get into that later. There are just so many options with it that almost makes your head spin. So at any rate, in the side of all that, like I said, there are just many different remotes out there. If you look down here, there are currently 295 radios online. 87 of those receive only. 208 of them can transmit. That's other than receive, obviously. And believe it or not, there are 197 clubs. That's right, 197 clubs, just like K6BJ. They're on this list. And the nice thing about RemoteHams.com is you could share a radio. I can be in the club mode. In fact, I am in the club mode, which means that it's not open to everybody, but basically to those that request permission to use your radio. So using the software that we have, you can customize your radio. You can only say, hey, I'm only going to allow 5 of my friends, or I'm going to allow certain people. It's not discriminatory, but just remember, it's your radio. I don't share my radio with everybody. I share my radio with those that are friends or somebody that really needs to use it. Other than that, it's just not open to Tom, Dick, and Harry to play around with. And I used to have it open that way, but I got a little bit upset when, I'd find my radio on, 1.6 megahertz in the FM mode. And I'm going, why the hell would anybody listen there? It's just people in there pushing buttons. So I didn't like that. So I kind of privatized my remote. And again, all these stations here, all 295 of them are from all around the world, different walks of life. They have different radios, different locations, different rules. If you want to share your radio, remember, it's your radio. You don't have to offer all the options on your radio. Here, for example, you have all these different buttons that you can do. I could just have it set up so you can transmit and maybe tune, and that's it. I could limit to whatever, or you could open it up, but I kind of leave it to the basic stuff that you just generally normally use as a regular ham without screwing things up. And that's why I have to keep it simple, Scott, and just limit, how much you can do. But for example, over here, you have your filter width, frequency shift, CW speed, RF gain, squelch, mic compression, offset repeater, and all that. And down here, you got memories. So it's very easy to go around to different memories just by clicking on them. For example, we'll go over to K6LY. Hello. There we go. K6LY, and that brings up a PL, the offset, and boom, you're there. Or you go back, or WR6AVD, for example. Or you go up here on the number pad, and let's see, 3865, that's 75 meters. Here we are, we're on 75 meters. I'm sure you can hear that in the background. So back over here now, and clip. There we go. Now we're back on the repeater. So remote has a lot of different uses. Brandon came across this radio earlier that I'd never seen before, which is really super cool. Oh, this is demo. I need to move this. I can't. Okay, there we go. Oops. RF binder. This is totally cool. Brandon can tell you about it, but this is a radio and basically an Android computer all in one. So you can use one push to talk as the RF deck. Come on, where is it? My mouse is not cooperating. Damn thing. At any rate, you have two push to talk buttons. One's for the software, the Android device, the internet, and the other's for regular VHF. So it's a multifunctional radio where you can use remote that way, like Brandon might demonstrate here in a bit. So it's a pretty cool device, and there are just so many possibilities with the remote. It's like use your imagination. And Brandon, fortunately, being the Einstein that he is, came up and developed all these tricky things. We've, been meeting together for a long time and just building it up over years and years and years. And it's been great. I mean, we really enjoyed doing it, and it's remote community. And if you have any questions, need any tutorials, there's plenty of stuff up here on YouTube. So there's a lot of stuff there. Again, it's very easy to join. Easy is 1, 2, 3. You sign up over here. Again, use your call sign as your username. And then you can go to the download page here. And then you can download, this is the client. This is what the users use. And if you want to share your radio, then you download the server. And like I said, you can customize your server to any way you want to. There are over, almost 300 people on there right now that have a custom radio. So like I said, not all two radios are alike. We've got a lot of little stations. We got big stations. We just have a big variety There are some other sites like Remote Ham Radio. They're great. They're doing it just like us, but however, there you're going to rent a radio, but they're big contest stations. You know, Stack Yaggies and the Legal Limit, and closer to Europe than you are, and stuff like that. So it really benefits them to basically rent their radio because they have a super station. So, all right, I think I've said enough. And Brandon, do you want to go ahead and pick it up there?
See if I unmuted. Hopefully I'm being heard.
I can hear you.
All right. Well, that sounded good, Scott. Thanks for the presentation there. And if there's anyone that has any questions or about the software or remote, I'm the main developer on the project. We do get help from others to help support various radios for like supporting the ICOMs and the ASUs on the server software to get those up and running. But anyways, yeah, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I've got a question.
Go ahead. I think that's Craig.
Yeah, yes. What is the primary difference between web SDR and remote hams? I've seen both used.
So SDRs are more software defined radios that integrate like directly to the computer with some kind of IQ stream, something similar to that. And then they have SDR software running on their computer. And that software is similar to the software by RemoteHams in the fact that it can provide access to them over the internet for receive purpose. Most of the SDRs are receive only, and they do work out, great for their purpose. So the main difference, I'd say, is you're actually able to transmit on the radios and control them, not just listen to them.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't realize they were receive only mostly.
Yeah, those software-defined radios like at Half Moon Bay or up in Utah, they allow, like, let's say 100 users, for example, to share the same receiver. But being that's a software computer-generated receiver, it's easy for the receiver to receive in many different places. Whereas your regular radio, like my K3, for example, will only do one frequency at a time. However, we can have multiple users, as we can see over here. Let me get rid of that. Down here, for example, you see myself and K3 Anybody else can log in. We can all share this radio. We can, in fact, many times, like tonight, for example, we were talking on 80 meters and we said, okay, we're done talking on the air, but we go into the test mode here. Once we do that, we're talking back and forth just like an intercom. So you can have multiple users at the same time. And all you're basically doing is you're sharing the radio. That's what it's all about, is sharing your radio. And we take pride in that. And people love to have the ability to share it with other people. And especially when you get into nets and or rag shoes. 75 meters is really big on rag shoes. Get a lot of old timers out there and young timers, newbies, whatever, just wanting to learn a little bit more about this. And people on 80 meters just love to shoot the bull.
Another question when you have time.
Go ahead.
Who is not allowed to use the radio? I guess, it would be just U.S. citizens, or?
Very, very good question, Craig. Who is not allowed to use radio? Well, anybody can use a radio for receiving. Okay. When it comes to transmitting, what we do is we have a verification process where you have to upload your license. And let's see, I go over here. You go over to my account. Okay. And then you go my license. Okay. This is where you would upload your license to our database. So once it's in a database, and let's say you request to use Brandon's radio, for example, and he says, well, I don't know who you are, So they basically, Brandon will go up and he'll look up your license. And this is what he'll see. Okay, WA6LIE. Okay, he's cool. Yeah, I'll allow him to use it. When it comes to other countries, you need to have what's called SEPT, and that's a SEPT approval, which is based out of Europe, which is European based mainly, where it's reciprocal licensing. So if you're in Poland, you can go over to England and operate. If you're in England, you can come over to the United States and operate. So the United States has agreements with different countries under the SEPT agreement. And basically the country has to be on your list before you can allow that person to transmit. A good example of somebody that cannot is a lot of South American countries are not SEPT. And you will have a lot of South Americans that want to use your radio. And I'd have to look it up now, but I don't know of any South American countries that have the SEPT reciprocal licensing. So it's mainly the European countries that are involved with that. Other than that, if you're licensed in the United States, Canada, or Mexico, that will fly in the United States.
You can always apply for dual licensing also. If you really want to operate a remote in a country that we don't have an agreement with, you can always apply for a license in that country and use that call sign when you're operating in that country.
May I ask a question? This is W6CARC.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
So is there an ability, if I'm using like I'm just use a random radio 857 to, when I'm in VHF or UHF mode, to transfer DTMF codes to control a repeater? Will RemoteHams pass those codes?
I believe I think there actually is DTMF support on the FT857. I know that was possible on some of the other ones, so I believe it is.
Okay. So there is the ability to transfer that through the RemoteHams system, the codes, the tones, I mean.
Yes, I'll double check that really quickly in the background, but I believe on the FT857, sending DTMF tones implemented.
Okay. Thank you.
You have to remember that some radios with their open code offer or support certain functions, whereas some other manufacturers do not. For example, Elecraft. Well, seeing that Brandon works with Elecraft, you can do anything you want with an Elecraft radio because he wrote it. So, but Yaesu, their drivers are pretty good, pretty complete. It really depends upon the manufacturer and who wrote the driver software to, be able to do functions like that.
Yeah, because that would be very handy if, in my case, I am a repeater owner, multiple repeaters, so that would allow me to use your system, be able to control the repeaters from afar. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Yes, and it does look like there is a DTMF specifically for the FT857. I used to have mine online. That radio's unfortunately doesn't work anymore, but KG6NRI, Joe, he used to get on remote and actually send a bunch of DTMF to help automate some of the maintenance he had to do there on his repeater.
That's what I'm looking for. So thank you very much for that. That would be a big help.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that was open. Is that a newer, is that a change recently?
It's one of the features supported in the driver for the FT857. It's a message called DTMF. So it provides basically a text field in the client so then you can enter things like ABC, and then it would send those DTMF tones. Or 0, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Joe would basically, have a script code, and he just type in the script code, send it, and boom, it would automatically change macros or whatever.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, he was able to copy and paste basically. So
Yeah, so like I said, you just use your imaginations. There's so many options and possibilities using the software that it'll make your head spin. But, for example, like I like to use, I'm not always going to be able to have an antenna. I knew that a long time ago. I might have to move and I might be screwed. And I go, well, at least I can use N6IJ, or I could use Brandon's radio or whatever. But again, I'd be using a remote. A lot of situations where you get into a retirement facility, for example, and you can't put up an antenna. You can have your computer though. Um, Same way with nursing homes and hospitals. Let's say you're in a hospital for a month, all laid up, and you have nothing to do. Well, get on the air. I mean, uh, there are a lot of people, elderly people, for example, like on 75 meters, where they've talked to their buddies for 20 years, and they're in there every day. And when all of a sudden you're forced to go into an apartment or restricted facility, you feel like crap. I mean, it's like, oh, what happened? I used to be able to talk to my buddies. Now you're all bummed out. And you go, wow, I wish I could do this, but you can. And that's another reason why I built it, is because you can do that. And you don't have to lose anything from your life quality and getting on the radio with your old buddies.
I've got a quick question about sharing the radios.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, this is Bruce, KN6 DBR. So if there's multiple users sharing the radio, is there one user that has control, or does everybody have equal control?
Everybody has equal control except for the guy that has an A in front of his call sign, and that's the administrator. The administrator overrides everybody. But other than that, everybody has equal control. You can share it the same way. You could just go down the list if you want. One person uses it, and the next person down the list uses it. You make your own rules. You share.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. If you're transmitting, it'll just be one frequency at a time.
Yes, just one frequency at a time, just like on your HF radio at home. Your dial's set to a certain frequency, and yeah, just that one frequency.
And then when you're applying to other clubs or radios for permission, I guess there's none of them that are just outright open. You got to go through a permission process for each radio.
It depends upon if they're in club mode or not. If they are in the club mode, yeah, you're going to need permission to tune. And then if you go to try transmit, you're going to need permission for that also. However, if it's basically an open remote, which it generally won't be, most of them are clubs. Those that are not club radios are generally mostly all receivers. There might be a few out there, but I don't think you can just randomly transmit on them. You need to get your license verified by the radio owner, because me as a radio owner, I don't want Joe Blow down in South America using my radio and jamming other people or whatever. So, I need to verify your license. And once I verify your license, I say, okay, Bruce is good to go.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I wouldn't leave mine open either. Yeah, thanks. That answers a lot of questions. Thank you.
Yeah, but like I said, there are a lot of receivers out there also, but we got stations from all around the world. And again, the security measures are just over the top. Brandon is one reason why I chose Brandon in the beginning was he was a young kid, only 18, and he was a little hacker, gamer, whatever, and he loved to get in the systems and do that. He knew how to break into places, open websites, find a back door, for example. And I go, that's the guy that I want doing security. Just like when you want to do home security, you hire a burglar to figure out the holes. So anyway, Brandon, turned into a great guy doing all that. And he was such a great guy that Eric at Elecraft trusted him. So, he got hired on Elecraft as an engineer for all the remote stuff, and been there for quite a few years and doing it remotely. You have any other questions out there?
I have one. generally are the newer radios easier? I mean, what kind of radios work better with remote ham? You mentioned Yaesu and the Elecrafts. Are the newer radios better than the older ones?
From the user side, from your side, as far as having a newer radio, it's a lot easier to interface into the software. In other words, you'll have a USB port already in the back for communications, and that USB port also might support audio. So, you have like a little microcomputer in your radio, which makes it really, really easy to talk to the software. For example, on my K3 here, I have an older K3. So I have to use one cable, a regular, 9-pinned in communications cable to talk to the radio. And then I need to do the audio in and the audio out. And those are just simple, 8-inch or sub-mini, connectors, mono connectors that you normally use for headphones or microphones. So, then it requires two more new cables. But a lot of newer radios, they're mostly plug and play, which makes them just easier to interface.
Yeah, that single USB cable makes a big difference when most of the newer radios have USB. But yes, if you have an older radio from the late 80s or the early 90s, it may take several cables or even an interface device to interface to the radio and convert everything to USB for you.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you so much. I noticed even some of the newest radios have a Ethernet jack on the back, which is almost like a network controller. I guess that would be something entirely different.
Yeah, so the K4 has an Ethernet connector, and I believe we've got the software supporting that, but not for audio yet. Now, the RemoteHams software does have support for the Flex radios, which do work over the Ethernet too. So there is support for some of the main radios out there that have Ethernet.
Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. Is there any last questions for Scott here regarding RemoteHams?
I think Jan had a question.
Go ahead.
What
Go
kind
ahead.
of computer runs the software to make the radio available remotely? Can you run it on a Raspberry Pi, or does it need more processing power than that?
Well, currently the software is Windows based, the server and the main client that everyone uses. So you will need a Windows PC, so it won't run on a Raspberry Pi in that sense. There is an Android application that so you can use on Android based devices, but no, it won't run on a Pi running Linux, and Macs and iPhones aren't supported at this time.
So the server software that is connected directly to the radio is meant to just run on your Ham Shack Windows computer. It's not meant to be like on a dedicated system just for doing that radio.
Currently, yes.
Okay.
It was started quite a long time ago when Windows computers were before we had all these fancy little devices to do things like that.
Yeah, we started out with Ham Radio Deluxe and Skype, and we've kind of moved way beyond that.
I've got a quick question about updates on the client. When you're in there using it, will it tell you if there's an updated client version, or do you got to search and see if one's available?
Yes, there is update notification in both the server and the client.
Okay, thanks.
And it generally checks when you first start it, and I think that's the only time it checks it. So when you launch it, it does the check.
Yeah, that's when it says, there's an upgrade available, whether you want to download it or not. But anyway, again, thanks a lot. I enjoyed being here, but You know, if you look on the screen here, you'll see this nice new radio that Brandon got, which seems really cool. I think it's rather expensive. Ben, maybe add a little bit more to it because I'm just looking at a picture. But he used it earlier tonight, and I was surprised. It's Android based, so it uses Android app, and it works. You hit one button to talk on remote hams, and you hit the other transmit button to talk to your local repeater, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I actually just received that thing today. I found it on the internet and thought it was interesting. I knew right away that I could run the remote app on it, and that's mainly why I got it, was to get into the remotes using it. But it is, and I was also looking for a VHF, UHF, dual band HT, and so it's working out pretty good so far. It's mainly set up for DRM digital stuff. I didn't really buy it for that purpose, but that's the main crowd that it's for. So if you like digital DMR repeater stuff, that's an HT that supports it, but it also works on normal VHF, UHF repeaters. And then it runs any kind of Android application, so you could even do Echolink and RemoteHams and various things on there. And it looks like they're continuing to work on the OS and add new features into their little app too for all the digital stuff.
Becky on the phone.
Go ahead, Becky.
So when you share your radios, you get a log of who has used your radio, where they are, all of that, so you can monitor that?
You better believe it. Yes. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, there is an activity log, and you can see everything people have been doing every time they hit transmit and change the frequency and everything like that. So you can go back and review, what people are doing, and if you've seen someone, doing something they shouldn't have been doing, you can then take action or whatever you want to do there.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, I've had to do this before on a few occasions, but you see that monkey business around, and you can ban them. You can ban them for a day, you can ban them for 2 hours, a week, forever. You can set up the ban time. I mean, like I said, there's just so much customization that you can do on your own remote. You could even set up for, a certain person can only transmit on certain frequencies at certain times, for example, or maybe if they're a no code, you can just limit them to, certain bands because that's all their license supports. Now, generally, I don't do that. It's your license, it's your problem. If you're using my radio illegally, ultimately it's your problem, not mine. It's just kind of like the repeater owner. If you have a jammer on the repeater, it's not the repeater owner's responsibility. It is to shut it down if there's excessive jamming, but ultimately the person who's going to be fined by the FCC is the jammer himself. So, like I said, there are just so many possibilities and options. They'll make your head spin, and you can just uniquely make the radio the way you want it. Again, like I said, you can only have an on-off switch, for example. You can remotely turn your radio on and off. Not all models, but some, depends upon the drivers. But just the possibilities are endless. And Brandon and I have worked very hard on making sure that you have all those options. You don't have to use them all, but they're available.
I remember a number of years ago, there was a local and every week a man, as you described, who was in a convalescent center, he would check in on RemoteHams, and it was, as he described it, kind of the highlight of his to be able to communicate with radio operators out of the area that he was familiar with, and amazing thing that helps a lot of people. What are some of the more interesting clients that you have or have had?
I don't know what you mean by as clients, but all I know is RemoteHams is very famous among the blind people, like Robert Ringwald, K3YBV. That's Molly Ringwald's daddy, by the way. He's blind, and he used remote hams a lot. And yeah, the blind guy used remote hams a lot. And if he can use it, I think just about anybody else can. We did have a good app, or not necessarily an app, but we did have the radios blind friendly, so there are a lot of shortcuts. So once you know the shortcuts and how to get in and out of it, it's actually very easy to use. So I'm actually surprised how many blind people have used our remotes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. I use the term client because I remember hearing that from Brian. We were first getting this up and running to our club, and I remembered that. Really nice to have you both here, and you are offering this for free. How can we support you?
Well, you can support us by sharing your radio and helping us grow.
Thank you so much.
Again, it's a remote hams. It's a remote community, and that's the only way I could put it, and that's the way I intend it to be. Intend it to be free and a community, whereas we're different from the other guys because we're free and we're a community. So I like it easier that way. Just keep it simple, Scott.
Dave has a question.
I do. Do you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Dave, DWP. It's been a long time since I've seen my paper license. I'm in the FCC database. Isn't that good enough?
Well, certainly it is. However, I have to add a warning. You get a reference copy from the FCC and you download a PDF. That is a secure document that the FCC locks from a copyright. So basically you could scan it and make a copy of it, or you can basically do a Control P on your computer, print it out and save it as a PDF file. I'm saying that because if you take that license the way it is and you upload it to our database, it will not get accepted because it is copyrighted. So that document will not work. So you got to convert it over to a JPEG by scanning it, or like I said, go to print it and do a Microsoft Windows PDF file, and then you can upload it. So yes, that is accepted. Or a picture. A lot of people just take a picture on their iPhone. That seems to be the easiest.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I have one more for Brandon. This is W6CARC Jack.
Yeah,
Brandon, is the IC, not to get too specific here, but is IC 7100, is that also set up to do DTMF codes to transmit them? Do you know? As I'm probably figuring out, I'm trying to figure out which radio to set up here.
Oh, oops, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. I'm not sure if the ICOMs support that. I'm just checking right now. It doesn't look like that's implemented on the ICOMs.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we can't.
Yeah, the drivers can be modified like what Roger does, huh?
Yes, and the way the DTMF tones work is there's actually just several wave files recorded of the DTMF tone. So it keys the radio and then plays those wave files based upon your input.
Oh, I see. So they're not active from the microphone. They're pre-recorded wave files.
Yeah, it's not technically a DTMF tone generator. It's just plain already generated tones.
You could probably just do your macros in MP3 files and play them over the microphone.
That's basically what it does. It's just in a wave format. So the server comes with those files when it gets installed. So if you wanted to, you could actually, change their content if for whatever reason you needed to.
Okay.
But the FT857 does support that right now. If we needed to add that to ICOM, that just take an update to come out to support that.
Yeah, okay. Because the ICOM sets up, because I was going to use the, for the ICOM, I was thinking about using the remote rigs and, take the faceplate and travel with that. But this would be a lot easier.
Well, Brandon, we know about remote rig, don't we?
Yeah, I've played with those things too. Well, yeah, you could definitely play with the software and have some fun without having to invest too much there up front. The remote rig boxes, I don't think you'd be able to send DTMF, but yeah, you can use your computer to get in.
Thank you for your guys' work on RemoteHams. I had it set up in the past, and some of the people have asked, can people get into it? Before I went to club mode, when I had it set up, people were leaving my radio on and coming in at nighttime, off hours from other parts of the country, and using my radio as a local receiver so they could hear what's going on when they're working on their rigs. So I'd come in the morning and find my radio had been left on, and things. So I went to club mode and cut off the general public from access, and that worked out a lot better. So I haven't used it here for about a year and a half. So that's why I was just kind of refreshing myself tonight. Thank you again for all your effort.
Yeah, glad to have you taking advantage of the software when you can. That's the whole point of it too, is you have all that control and you can set it up however you want to, whatever you want to do with the remote. If it's for yourself or your friends, or if you just want to show your radio off.
All right. It's a really nice tool for traveling. That's what I did a few times, and then I haven't used it for a while. So you got me stimulated to go back and get on and connect again. Thank you.
Yeah, and there are a lot more radios out there now, Jack. So, you can, for example, use my FT857 here in Salinas and go through the memories and dial up the K6BJ repeater when you're having a Mai Tai over in Hawaii, and check into the net if you wanted to.
Very good.
And also, I just have a real quick story. You mentioned remote rig, and one day I went to Elecraft to, I don't know, I was picking up a part or something, and I'd known Eric for many, many years. We both lived in Aptos. That's where I started my homebrew remote in Aptos. And so Eric was familiar. I used remote in Aptos, and I was currently working on a remote project, and he was too. And he showed me the K3, which basically was an empty box with just the face plate, the control panel, the computer, if you will, with no RF in it at all. So it's basically an internet radio or a dumb terminal. And he had hooked up the remote rig boxes, and he was doing a demo for me. And I said, "Oh, hang on, come back in 15 minutes. Something's not working right." And came back 15 minutes later, and I don't know. I wasn't very impressed. It was very sloppy. Latency was really, really super high. Things just didn't really work that well. And you had, the two remote rig units, and you needed to have two K3s at both ends, and this and that. And it was going to cost you a lot of money. I'm saying to myself, we're doing that same thing with software, not hardware. Kind of like the SDR radios, all software defined versus having mechanical filters and all that sort of stuff. And I'm saying to myself, we got it down. Our system works a lot better than yours does. But Eric was a hardware guy. He just had to have the hardware. He didn't care much for the software or the firmware. That's where Brandini comes into place, because Brandon had really developed the system up really good. And I mentioned that to Eric, and And I said that very evening, I said, Brandon, you need to get your act together, get your resume together. I set up an interview for you to visit Eric at Elecraft, and he actually followed through. He visited Eric at Elecraft, was hired on the spot, been there ever since. He's their top guy in development, even with the K4, with all the firmware and all the remote stuff. So kudos you, Brandon, or Brandini. You're doing a great job, and everybody else, including myself, really appreciates that. So at that, I think I've said enough. Unless there are any questions, I'll shut up.
Brandini.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Scott, for coming and presenting, and Brandon. A blessing to really learn from the people in the middle of such a wonderful ham radio project. And you certainly drew a pretty healthy crowd tonight. So that's great, you know. Just while I have the group here, I wanted to say our next meeting will either encompass SDR or DMR radios. And we're putting that together, looking for resources, and hopefully it'll be as well put together as Scott and Brandon have done here. Okay, is there any other comments before we wrap up the meeting? Am I missing anything?
Paul here. I just earlier I sent Brandon in a chat just directly to him about that RF Finder radio. I wanted to talk to him about it. I don't know if he read the message, but I was just wanting to get his contact for later. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Let's.
All right. No, I didn't even notice the chat messages. I'll go through that now.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, once again, I want to thank you all for attending the K6BJ Radio Club meeting. We're trying to really push for education, good presentations, trying to make sure that we have a good time at our parks on the air, our lighthouse, our field day, and that we move forward on projects. I'm relying heavily on the repeater committee. I'm relying heavily on the folks in Aries and other areas to improve the club on my watch, on our watch. And I want to thank you all for participating. And with that, I'm willing to close the meeting. How about it, Gary? Anything else? No. Okay. Okay. Thank you again for all of your attending. And again, thank you, Scott and Brandon, for coming. It made a wonderful presentation. And have a good night, everybody.